Hello, my name is K.Tracy, and although I am retired now, I was involved in education for 39 years. I also was involved with value creating education since the early 80s, almost 40 years now. Over that time, I had many experiences with value creating education, but today I would like to focus on just one of those experiences in order to give you an idea of some of the basic principles of value creating education and what it looks like in action. So in the year 2000, I became the principal of a large elementary school in a very wealthy suburban neighborhood. Everyone loved the school. It had a really great reputation. Despite that, the scores were good, but not really great. And it didn't take me long to realize that the climate at the school really needed improvement drastically. I looked at some of the statistics. First of all, suspensions. They had 22, 21 suspensions. And, over time, that really did change. But in the beginning, I saw 22 suspensions in elementary school. That's just too many. And the other thing that I noticed the very first week of school was I would have 10 to 15 students in my office for disciplinary measures every day. I thought, this is too much. This is not sustainable. First of all, the students are not getting an education when they're sitting in my office waiting for disciplinary action. And it also didn't show value for students. I thought I could see right away that crime and punishment was the philosophy of the building. Parents and teachers alike believed in crime and punishment. They thought mistakes were bad. If you make a mistake, you get punished, so you won't do it again. And that is definitely not value creating education. And so I realized I had my work cut out for me. And I began with a problem solving approach. And as students came down, I didn't stop them from coming down to the office. And if, students were sent down, I would ask them to come in and talk with them and say, "Hey, Johnny, how are you?" And they would look at me like, can I say good when I'm down here for a problem? And so I would ask them what happened. And sometimes they would not tell me the truth. Sometimes they might. But before they came down, I always found out exactly what happened. I would talk to the teacher on the phone, or I would, have my secretary find out what happened. So I knew the details. And they would come in and they would say things like, "What are you going to do to me?" And I would say, "I'm not going to do anything to you. I love you. You're amazing." Then I would say, "Who did you hurt? You didn't hurt me. What's the problem? Who did you hurt?" "Well, I punched Johnny at recess, or I, was mean to someone in the classroom," or whatever the problem was. And I'm like, "Oh, well, what are you going to do about that? What are you going to do?" And I would put the onus of the problem back onto them. And at first they would say things like, "I don't know." And I say, "Well, give it some thought." So now I have them thinking. This is an important part too, of students owning and taking responsibility for the problems. They have to think about solutions. And sometimes I would say, "Do you want my advice, or do you want to know what I think about that?" Honestly, they don't often want to know what I think because I'm way too old. But I sometimes would say, "Do you want to know what other kids who do the same thing have done to solve that problem?" And sometimes they would go for that. And sometimes they would have ideas themselves about how they could fix it. And so over a course of having a dialogue around it, we would come up with a reasonable solution. And if they minimized the problem and I could see that they weren't really sorry, I would say, "Okay, that's fine. What else? What else? What else?" Like, until I really could see that the consequences for their behavior was making them feel sorry. I would never tell them that they had to say, "I'm sorry," or apologize. I would never say that. I would let them come up with that as one of the consequences. But I wouldn't make them say they were sorry. but I would make them feel sorry based on the consequence. And sometimes they would come in so sorry that I would just try to build them back up. And so over a course of several years, because value creating education is not quick, it's a slow process, evolving over time. And it took several years, but eventually I went from 10 to 15 people in my office every day to 2, 1 or 2 every week, which is a very significant change. But in order to make that happen, I had to educate the staff. I had to educate the parents. And we put many things into place, including like a professional code for the staff and the community. For example, we all agreed that we would focus on what is best for kids. We would take responsibility for our actions as adults. We would respect people and their ideas and their time. We'd be honest and open and fair, no hidden agendas. Expect a great deal out of ourselves and others. Ask questions, take risks, negotiate conflict. Practice effective communication and collaboration. Contribute to a positive work environment. Be supportive and encouraging, and take care of ourselves. Every year, we would put a code of conduct together for us as adults and vote on it and agree, wordsmith it. And these are the kind of things that we talked about as adults. And so really respecting ourselves and teaching children how to do the same, how to respect themselves. But I remember in the beginning, after I would work with a child and get them all feeling like, okay, they've solved the problem, they're smiling. I'm like, you ready to go back to class? Yes, they'd go back to class, smiling, and the teacher would call me within 1 minute of the kid coming back to class, and he's smiling. And I'm, yes, is he ready to learn? And they're like, yes. I said, problem solved. But I realized in the very beginning that they were still worried on crime and punishment. They wanted to come back feeling sad and that they had made a mess of it, and they've been duly punished, and now they're sad. But I was able to really change that again over time and using a number of programs. It wasn't just one thing, and we had a very strong character education program over time that really helped us, and kids were involved with it. They had character education assemblies where they taught each other. We actually had, pillars of character like caring, fairness, trustworthiness, responsibility, respect, and citizenship. And we taught these for the first, 5 or 6 years. And eventually we realized that kids were very familiar with this, being trustworthy, and friendships and fairness. These are all good things. But we moved forward with performance characteristics over time, things like zest, grit, self-control, social intelligence, gratitude, optimism, and curiosity. And especially grit, or that ability to never give up. It helped kids become emotionally strong. And holding kids accountable, made them feel, again, empowered, and also because they were the ones that were going to solve the problem. Now, students did have consequences, and it took me a while to help the parents to realize that consequences are good. And if they forgot their lunch, the parents would automatically just bring their lunch in. And I would help the parents to realize, can the student who you just did a big favor for because they forgot, can they come home and maybe empty the dishwasher for you and do one of their jobs that you had to leave behind because you're taking care of them, and that kind of attitude. And some parents really loved that. Other parents were like indignant, like, I get to bring my kid's lunch if I want. And he's a good kid, he doesn't need to. And, I heard what they were saying, but they didn't want to hold him accountable. And that created problems, but over time they were able to see, and the whole level of kids forgetting started to come down. because we're holding people accountable. I think a character education is not all of what a value creating education is, but as we develop ourselves, our character, and become having dignity for ourselves and respect for ourselves and others, this is a key component of value creating education. And so I could see that by my 13th year there, we became a national school of character. And really, I could see the effort over time had really made a big difference that affected other areas of the school as well. But value creating education, in this case, was really paramount to making a significant difference for not only students, staff, and parents as well in the community. Thank you. I hope this helps.